Hi everyone, lcjensen here. Today we are going to make some corn chowder, potato, corn, and ham chowder, some sourdough discard banana breads, and we'll cook up some melts. So let's start. Let's start getting our onions caramelized for our um, chowder, and then we're going to start on our banana bread. So I'm using just half of an onion here. We had leftover from one of our, I think, dinners or whatnot, or maybe yesterday. Who knows? But using it up. I'm going to do a nice kind of small dice on it. And then I'm just going to throw this in my Dutch oven and let it start to kind of caramelize up. That way we can get all that nice flavor in our broth for our chowder. We're going to put about, I want to say, a tablespoon of olive oil in there. And then I'm going to turn it on to about a 6. I'll use this one. Give them a little coat. And now let's start our banana bread. We have very ripe bananas. We've got 4 very ripe bananas. And we're going to put them in there. Before I put them in, I like to give them a little smush. Kind of just makes them a little bit easier to mash up. The browner the banana, the better for banana bread. Last week, I made a little snafu when I was ordering from like Amazon Fresh, and I thought I had bought 6 bananas. I bought 6 bundles of bananas, and now we're going to have a lot of banana stuff coming up. So I've got my 4 bananas in here. Let me throw this away. And I'm going to use my fork to kind of smash them up first. And then we'll add some sugar and melted butter and all that jazz. But you want to make sure you get your bananas mashed up good. You don't want to have any, big chunks in there, because then you'll have it bake up in a big chunk and it's not that great. But we're going to get these mashed up. And again, you've got to use bananas that are past their prime. The browner they are before they go like mold or rotten is the best, because that is when they're going to have the most natural sugar and the best flavor. There we go. Okay, so we've got our bananas all mashed up. And now let's prep on making the rest for the banana bread. Then we'll finish up our stew, our chowder. Okay, we're going to add in 1 cup of granulated sugar. And this is going to give the nice sweetness to our banana bread. And once you start mixing this in, it's going to actually get pretty soupy, because the sugar instantly starts kind of dissolving with the natural juices of the bananas. So now we've got kind of our soupy banana mixture. We're going to add in our sourdough discard. So we're going to use a 1/2 cup of sourdough discard for this recipe. And if you have active starter, that's fine. You're not using it for any of the rising agents or whatnot. You're just using it to get rid of it so you can feed it and make more sourdough bread, which we'll be feeding in a little bit. Okay, we're going to mix this in. Make sure it's all incorporated. Then we're going to add in a half a cup of melted butter, which is the same as 1 stick. I'm using salted butter. Get all of that gooey goodness in there. And then I'm just going to give my onions over here for our chowder a nice stir. Do some double stirring. There we go. Turn those down a little bit. We're going to try to really incorporate that butter into it. I know the oil part of the butter wants to, rise to the top. Just give it a good mix. And I use butter in my baked goods because I think it just tastes so much better than using an oil. Gives it a nice, richer texture. Okay, we're going to add in 2 eggs. So 1 and 2. And then we're going to give it a pop on each yolk. That way they'll mix up nicely. And then we're going to whip this in. We can do all of our stirring now, but once we add the flour in, we want to minimize the amount of stirring we do because we want nice fluffy banana bread versus a stiffer one. And if you over mix it, you're going to get stiffness. And that only happens when you get to the flour. Okay. We are going to put in 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. So 1 and 2. We'll give this a good stir. Then we're going to do our baking powder and our salt. And then it'll last be our flour. And then we'll have our good base mixture. And I'm going to do some without nuts. And then I'm going to do some with walnuts and some with chocolate chips. Give this a stir. Okay. Now for the baking powder. We want 2 teaspoons of baking powder. 1 and 2. And then we want a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. If you were using unsalted butter, I would then increase it to a teaspoon of salt because you really want, the salt is going to be a flavor enhancer. It's going to help bring out that natural banana flavor. So you definitely want to add it. We're going to give this a good mix. Make sure that baking powder gets well incorporated into this mixture. This way you don't have to do the extra work of sifting it into your flour and then mixing it in. Okay. Now we are going to add in 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. So we've got 1 and 1/2 cups. And then we're going to mix it in till it's just incorporated. It will be lumpy, but that's what we want. We want a lumpy, chunky batter. You know, always try to resist the urge to over mix. That, you know, if you over mix, that's when you get a firmer end product, and we want it to be nice and light and fluffy. Okay, so mix it around. You know, scrape the sides of the bowl. You can kind of do the folding action here. And now do you see, guys, how it is chunky? That is what we want, just barely incorporated. Okay, we are going to be doing 2 things today. We're going to be doing some dinosaur shapes because my little ones love that. And then we're just going to do 2 mini loaves, depending on how far it gets me. With these little specialty ones, the key for them coming out pretty is to really oil them up. And I find there's a couple versions of this, but it's the baking spray. It has flour added into it. And so it works really well in helping things come out of the nonstick pans without and they keep their shapes. And these will be perfect for our little dinosaurs. Okay, so let's scoop this in our banana bread in here. These with these, you do want to try to fill them up to the top, and they'll make a little dome when they come out, but you want them to be all in little crevices. And then we're going to bake these up, and then we'll work on our chowder for lunch.
You have a question? Is this finishing off all those bananas?
It is getting us halfway there. I think tomorrow I'm going to make banana donuts. We still have, as you can see, they're pretty pitiful sight there. They're constant reminder of to double check my orders when I'm doing an online order. But I think after our banana donuts, I'll probably do a double batch, and then I'll probably make maybe chocolate banana muffins in a day or two. Luckily with this is your bananas, these will still like ripen up for another week before they kind of go bad. Okay. We're filling this out. You want to get these all the way up to the top because we want nice little, they're going to be cool dinosaur shape on one side and then a fat dome on the other. Okay. We've got this one. Now we're going to do, I think I have enough for 2 mini loaves for it. Let me give my, good batter. My onions a nice little stir here. I'm going to turn them down low. They'll be ready for our next stage of our process. Okay. We are going to grease up our little mini baking things. You could put parchment paper in here, but this stuff actually works really well. It's easier than trying to cut one out. Okay. And what I'm going to try to do here is kind of divide my batter in half. We're going to put nuts on one side and chocolate chunks on the other. That way we can have a little variety. I love nuts in my banana batter. So I'm just going to put just a small handful. And these are walnuts. We'll mix this up. And then I'm going to spoon that in. Although, you know what? Chocolate nut or walnut banana bread would actually sound pretty delicious. Okay. We're going to scoop this in here. And these little loaves are going to cook a little bit longer than our big ones, but not as much long as if you do a full-on banana bread loaf. Those, I try to avoid doing the whole big banana bread loaf because I find they get really dry when you're doing them because they have to cook such a long time to get the middle undone. So I love either mini loaf pans or doing muffins.
Yeah, question. How full do you need to make the mini loaf pan?
You don't have to do very full. Mine are actually going to be kind of, I wouldn't typically do them a little bit fuller than this, but I'm trying to make 2. But you want to do them about, I want to say 2/3. I'm going to cut them a little smaller because I am doing 2 flavors here. And so they'll bake up a little bit less. Now, if you do the banana loaves to the top, the problem you have the same thing with the big loaf thing is they will not get cooked in the middle and then they get dry out. So I do 2/3 on that. Put the rest of this in. It was about, I want to say, maybe 1.5 tablespoons of chocolate chunks. Give this a nice stir. And then we're going to add this in to our other one. There we go. And I do love, not all of my kids like chocolate chunks in their banana bread, so I don't do it often, but I love it. It's just like the chocolate chips in your pumpkin bread. I love it. Maybe it's because I just like chocolate. There we go. I'm going to actually put a little bit more in this one. And these will be ready to pop in our oven. I do have my oven preheated to 400 degrees. And they're going to bake for about 15 minutes. Not quite as long as muffins, because this tin cooks them a little bit faster. And the loaves might take a little bit longer, but we'll check when we get there. So I have my oven preheated to 400. The trick with the loaves, don't put them vertical, the mini ones. Got to do them horizontal. Otherwise, they kind of go in between your little baking rack. And then make sure you have a little space between them. Here we go. And now I'm going to set my timer. And we will get ready to make our chowder. I'm going to give my hands a little quick wash because it's got a little banana batter on it. Okay. We've got our onions nice and caramelized here, which is perfect for our chowder. It's going to just bring in an extra flavor for our broth. We're going to dice up some celery. I'm just going to take the ends off. Whenever you buy the the pre-cut celery, the ends always dry out and then they get really fibrous. So I always just cut the ends off because they're not great for the overall end product. Okay, and I'm now gonna slice these all down the middle, just so I'm not having huge celery chunks in my soup. I like it to be a little bit more smaller, less noticeable, but you get it kind of really dispersed throughout your chowder. Here we go. And we're just going to do a nice little dice on these, and then I'm going to throw them in here with our onions so they can start to saute up as well to release some of that natural flavors out. I always try to saute my vegetables up in my soups before adding liquid. It just gives a nicer flavor. You just get a better layer of complexity to your broth. Okay, give that a stir. And then we're going to add in about a teaspoon of garlic. And we'll give that a good turn. Whoop. Overboard. You can smell the fragrant celery smell. And now I'm going to do a quick peel on my carrots, and we will dice them up as well. And then we'll do our potatoes. And then once we have them all kind of in a nice like saute on them, then we'll add our broth to it. But I do like to get them at least a little bit browned up and sauteed. It just gives them a nicer flavor and texture in your soup. Okay, so we're using 3 big carrots here. Well, I guess they're kind of smaller versions of the big carrots. And we're going to dice these up. So I'm going to take off my ends. And we're going to take off the bottoms too. And the same thing, the very top by the, where like the leaves of the carrots come out are just firm and hard. And then the bottoms can also dehydrate fast, leaving them to be more chewy versus a nice little tender crisp. We're going to have them as well. And then we're going to dice these up. And then we'll throw them in with our celery, onions, and garlic mixture. And give these a nice, steal this one back out. Oh, I guess it did cut all the way through. But we're adding our diced in carrots. And give them a nice stir. Let them saute up as well. And now here for our potatoes, I'm going to be using some gold potatoes as well as some baby new potatoes. But these work really well for chowder because they are waxier. They work well for soups versus like russets. Russets are a bit more fluffy when you cook them up, so they disintegrate in your soup. And these also have a nice tender skin, so you don't have to peel them if you don't want to. And I love the skin, so I never peel them. Extra work. So I'll give these diced up. But again, you'll want to, for russets are great for mashed potatoes and baking, but for soups, you want to stick with either like a new potato or a gold potato. They're just waxier, hold their shape better, hold their flavor better. And then I'm just going to kind of quarter. I'll aid some of these ones as well. There. And I'll add them in and let them start to saute. And then we'll add some spices in and get some spices to kind of get heated up before we add the broth to really bring out their flavor.
You had a question about your sourdough. When are you making your next loaves, and do you know if they are?
I'm going to be prepping some new loaves tonight. I'm going to feed my starter here in a little bit. And then I'm not 100% sure what they are. I kind of look through my ingredients in my house and trying to see what might be. So I'm not 100% sure. I might do another pepperoni loaf because that was good and that was really delicious. And I was told I needed to add even more pepperoni. So I might do that. And I got this kind of spicy Italian seasoning, which I think might go really well with it. So we might do like a spicy pepperoni loaf. But again, I haven't definitively decided yet on which sourdough. It will definitely make our traditional one. I'm also thinking about trying to do some mini loaves. So I have teeny tiny Dutch ovens, and I was thinking about doing a bunch of mini loaves and seeing how those turned out. So we're gonna see where it lands us. I'm gonna cube up some ham to add into our chowder as well. This will add a little bit of extra flavor. It's a great way. We had ham for one of our little Easter dinners, and this is a great way to use it up if you're sick of ham sandwiches. And we're just gonna make sure when you do throw it in there, just cut off kind of that outer crusty skin. It will just end up being chewy and not a nice feature in your soup. There. It is just, I always like to reuse my ingredients in fashion. I never like to have anything go to waste, especially, you know, when you have a pretty big family. You know, groceries get expensive when you're feeding every day between 9 to 11 people. So I always find ways, if we have leftovers, how can we refashion them or use things in fun, different ways. And this week we made like Denver omelets with our ham, and we made ham and cheese melts, which is kind of an obvious. And now we're going to put them in our chowder. And I think this is going to conclude. This is the last of my ham. But this is a nice little, something that's pretty different. But it works great for a chowder. There we go. And I think the rest of those are just skin scraps. So I'm going to toss this in. Let me give a good scrap. So these will add a nice little flavor. And some nice little meaty chunks in our soup, our chowder. Okay. Let's get some herbs in here. We're going to use some bay leaves. I'm going to take out 2 bay leaves, and we're going to crush them up and add them into our soup. We're going to heat them up right now in there. That will just help a little bit of their flavor go out. But by crushing them up, it's going to let the flavor come out faster than if you leave them whole, which is great for when you're doing like a quick soup. And when you also crush them up, you don't notice their texture. They kind of blend in with all the other spices. We're going to put a little bit of oregano in, about a teaspoon. And then about a half a teaspoon of black pepper. And then I have some fresh thyme that I'm going to chop up and add into here. So I have 2 little bins here of thyme. Get used through it. And I'm just going to try to pull off the big stalks because we don't want those in our soup. And leave it's fine to have some of the little ones. They won't, you can mince them up fine. But those big ones will be fibrous, and then you'll feel like you have a twig in your soup. So we're going to pull the leaves off of our thyme. This is going to add a lovely flavor. If you don't have fresh thyme, you could substitute by adding in about a teaspoon of dried thyme. There we go. A little bit more. Unfortunately, there's really no great way to de-leaf herbs. Get some of these big ones out, and then we're going to give them a nice mince over, and we'll add them in. And then we're going to start prepping our melts. We have our caramelized onion, garlic, and sage sourdough bread that we baked up, I think, 2 or so days ago, and some traditional ones. And I'm going to do a bougie grilled cheese, or like a triple cheese grilled cheese. And then we're going to do for the other sandwich, we're going to do a pepperoni and salami melt. Grab all these good herbs. We're going to give them a nice, maybe don't go crazy like that. A nice stir, scoop all of them over. And then we're going to add in our water. Well, we're going to add in broth. I'm going to be using chicken bouillon and some water, but you could use straight up chicken broth. If you are using like a broth, you'll want to add more salt to your soup. I'm using bouillon, which is a bit more salty. I'm adding in 4 cups of water, so it'd be like 4 cups of chicken broth or 1 carton. And then I'm going to do a big scoop of chicken bouillon. And we're going to add this in, and this is where we'll get all the kind of saltiness for our soup, so I don't need to add any extra salt. But if you are using like a carton of chicken broth, you will want to add a bit more salt because that's typically a bit blander. Okay. We're going to let this come to a simmer. Let me pick up this piece of celery. I keep stepping on it. Okay, let's start prepping our sandwiches. Let me grab my skillet out. It's my favorite for cooking grilled cheeses. It's a hex-clad 12-inch griddle pan. So it's not called a skillet, it's called a griddle pan. Love it. It was one of those bonus add-ins when I was ordering, and it was like for $99, get this on. And I was like, oh, will I actually use it? Use it all the time. Okay. So this is our yummy specialty loaf. It is garlic, fresh sage, and caramelized onion. So I'm going to use this for my bougie grilled cheese. It was like one the other day, and it didn't pop up and spring out of the oven as much. And then I realized that was the day somebody had like turned our AC down. And so our house was like 66 degrees. And if you don't know much about the sourdough process, the temperature of your house can really mess with your starter and whatnot. So it didn't rise it as much because it was so cold in our house. Let's cut off, and we'll start with a fresh slice there. And so I was wondering why. I was like, why didn't it pop? But it was because of that. You know, it's the same thing if your house is really hot, it will overproof really fast because the natural bacteria will speed up. Okay. We're going to use a little bit of room temperature butter here. And I'm going to add just a little bit on one side of it. This is going to be the side that touches the skillet. And we're going to do the same with our other one. But the nice thing was, even though it wasn't the best thing, like the perfect rise up on it, it was still delicious. It wasn't gummy. It was just a little bit more bubbly than mine. I typically like a tighter crumb. Some people like the bigger bubbles. But then I was like, that's exactly what it was. It was because our house was cold. We still don't know who turned down the AC. It's a mystery in here. I think it was my stepdad. I'm going to add, this is Havarti. So I'm going to add a layer of Havarti to each one. And this, I will say, Havarti pairs really well with like pepperoni, Italian things because it's a mild cheese, so it allows your kind of spicier meats to show. I feel like if you use like a cheddar or something that's kind of stronger, it competes with it. We're going to do, for the kind of salami and pepperoni melt, we'll do a nice layer of pepperoni. And a layer of salami. There we go. You don't want to go too crazy thick with your meat or your cheeses will never melt. And then for the top layer on the melt, there we go. We are going to use some Gouda. Gouda again is great for like more milder like cheeses that you want to use that have a good melting point. And I love it. I love Gouda. It's one of those cheeses I grew up eating all the time because it was always on our smorgasbord at Christmas time. And that was we always do this big Swedish feast at Christmas. And the smorgasbord was, we'd always have Gouda and Edam cheeses. Here our muffins are grabbing us, so we'll finish that up when we come back. Want to grab those out? Let me grab my oven mitts. And here we go. I think our loaves, these still need a minute or two, but our dinosaurs are nice. Give them a feel. Yep, nice and firm. When they pop them out, when they cool in just a second, you'll see the cool dinosaur shapes on the other side. So, but you got to let your pan cool down just a minute before you pop them out. So when we do that, I'll pop them out and then we'll see all of our fun dinosaur shapes. Okay, let's put our cheese on it. I said they don't look pretty now, but once we flip them over, you're going to see the really cool dinosaurs, which is what the kids all... It's funny how they'll argue who gets the T-Rex, who gets the one. Luckily, this mold has like 2 of each dinosaur, so it's not too much of a tragic thing. But I know Teddy sometimes he'll have eaten like 2 of the Triceratops, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Where are my Triceratops?" And I'm like, "Well, you already ate them all, bud."
You have a question? Is a smorgasbord like a charcuterie board?
No. So a smorgasbord is a like 6-course meal. And so it is you have the first part of the smorgasbord, which is like a charcuterie, where it is cold cheeses and meats and cold fish. And so like herring and pickle stuff. And then you have so it's like meats and cheeses, and then it's like fish. Then it's the like warm, like halfway warm courses. Then it's the full warm courses, and then dessert. But there is a strict way you have to eat it, and if you deviate from it, the Swedes will grumble at you. But I think it's delicious. My family does. My married-in family does not. I'm trying to get my kids to get onto it because I'll make a lot of traditional foods for it. They love the Swedish meatballs. They're not so much a fan of the herring selection. But I mean, I would say I'm not much of a fan of the herring selection, but I make sure I eat each one. And then there's this potato dish we make every year. It's called Jensen's Temptation. And it's kind of like a scalloped potato or a potato gratin, but you put anchovies in it. You don't taste the anchovies. I think it's delicious, but not everybody thinks it is. I will say there's different things. And then you have, the meatballs are everyone's favorite. And then you have the Swedish ham, which is not like an American ham. It actually tastes more like a pork chop. I'm going to put in a cup of frozen corn in here. We're going to stir it up. There we go. And let's start mincing up some of our fresh herbs that we're going to put towards the end. I'm going to add these bottom parts of my green onions first so that they kind of mellow out, and then we'll save the last bits for the very end of our garnishing at the soup. Okay, so let's get these guys in here. Give them a nice stir. We'll also be adding some half and half to this. I like my chowder to be a little bit thinner, so I don't mix flour in. But if you like a nice thick chowder, when you add the half and half in, if you put it in a little bowl and you mix it with about 1/4 cup of flour until it's kind of like a thicker pasty thing, then you add that to your chowder. That will give you that nice thick chowdery texture. But I love more of a brothy soup. But if you like it that way, that is a great way to thicken it up. Let's mince these, and then I'm going to go check on our little mini loaves, pull those out. because those should be just about done. And then we should be able to pop these guys out. Okay, so I'm gonna go grab my mini loaves and perfect. Nice and hot. I think, can't tell which one's the chocolate. I think this is the chocolate chunk and that one is the nut. Our banana bread is like a blonder loaf. You can do, I do two different, I have a couple variations of banana bread I do depending on how I'm feeling. I have one where I use brown sugar, which gives you a more golden loaf and a richer one, but I'm doing banana donuts tomorrow, which my banana donuts have brown sugar in it. So I decided to do kind of my blonde loaf today, which is a little bit lighter and slightly less caramely flavor to it. You don't have that molasses flavor in it from the brown sugar, but equally delicious. And then this is my one using my sourdough discard, which I find works well with the white sugar. Okay, we've got our butter melted on here, so we're just warming up. We're going to do our flip. Our skillet should be nice and warm. Let's turn this guy down. I'm going to check on my dinosaurs. Oh, they are perfect. So let me grab a cutting, you know what? Got a cutting board right here. We'll flip them out on it. That way we can see it. Clear this up. And then you guys can see the coolness. This is where the kids, they're always so excited because I'll put them in my little cake display and they love the little dinosaur parts. So you just wait. This is our Stegosaurus. We have a Brontosaurus, Triceratops, another Stegosaurus. I say you get two of each one. This is the T-Rex. Those are the ones. My Teddy's favorite one is the Triceratops. You would think it would be the T-Rex because we call him T-Rex a lot. There we go. But here are our awesome sourdough discard banana bread dinosaurs that we cooked up in our dinosaur mold. So they'll have all the great flavors of banana bread, but in a dinosaur shape, which is always a pleaser for the kids. Okay, we've got our chowder here. I'm going to turn it down. It's got a nice little simmer on it. Bring it down to about a 4. I like to get it hot so it's boiling with the tenderizing the potatoes. Okay, now we have both sides of our bread warmed up. We're going to do the crisping up for the nice golden color. Put them right here. And while we're waiting, we are going to feed our sourdough so we can make sourdough bread tonight. Turn this down just a smidge. So we're going to make a couple loaves tonight. I'm deciding whether we're going to do, I think I might do my one specialty loaf, and then I'm going to do my other one. I'm going to turn into mini loaves, and we'll see how that is. I'm going to add 10 tablespoons of flour to my starter to feed it up. Hopefully, I can count. I'm not very, for some reason, talking and counting is something I cannot do. There we go. 9. Yeah, I got it. Okay, yes. There we go. 10. I have miscounted. I know. Well, I don't like. I can't. My problem is I can't fully put that right finger up when I count, and so then it's off. I added 10 tablespoons, and I'm gonna add 150 milliliters of water, which is the same as 10 tablespoons. Just a little bit easier than having to count out 10. The reason I don't do my flour with the 150 milliliter things is because there's always like your flour doesn't necessarily pocket in well. Let's see, we need to probably flip these for just a second and then we'll give that a good stir. Oh, yep, look at that nice golden color on our grilled cheeses here. Now, let's stir this up by my spatula. Need a long spatula for this. And then you're just going to mix it all the way in here. And then tonight we'll be ready to make sourdough bread. You have to feed your starter. I find the magic number is like 4 to 8 hours before you make your bread, so it's nice and active so that your bread will rise. If your starter is not active, then your bread will be a like a gummy, dense thing.
And
So,
to clarify, you mean make the dough,
yes.
bake the bread.
Yes, we'll make the dough and we'll bake the bread tomorrow night because the dough needs lots of time to proof. And I do a nice long cold proof, which gives me the best spring in my sourdough. So this guy will be ready for our bread making tonight. Let's finish off our chowder here. Okay. So we're going to add in our cream in just a second. I'm just going to give it a nice stir before I add in my cream. I'm going to give it a taste. Make sure we don't need to add any more spices.
You have a question? Do you have the starter recipe on your page, where it shows the steps from the very beginning?
I do have the starter recipe on my page, as well as a video on how to do your starters through a whole week. I do have the starter recipe on my page, as well as a video on how to do your starters through a whole week process, and a video on how to make sourdough, the traditional loaf from the very beginning. So all of those can be found on like the link on our page, and we have them all in there. And there's a recipe card for the starter as well.
And you're about to start a new one.
And yes, I'm about to start. I'm going to start my chocolate starter soon. I ordered a jar, and as soon as that jar arrives, to use the special sourdough jars because they have like a little measurements on them, and it makes it just a little bit easier. Okay, our chowder was delicious, so we're going to add in our green onions right now, and let's check our grilled cheeses here. I can hear them sizzling. Make sure they're nice and good. They are. I'm going to turn this off or flip, and the skillet is off. Okay, we got our green onions in. I had 3 green onions that I chopped up and I added in here. Then we're going to add in our half and half. We're going to add about, I want to say, a half a cup. You could use cream. You could use cream and use a little bit less if you wanted to. If you like a much thicker chowder, what you can do, instead of pouring the half and half right away in, you mix it with some flour and then you cook it up in here. As you boil, it will thicken up. But I like a thin broth. I've always loved a thin broth on my chowder, which is not, a lot of people like that. I like a thin broth. I've always loved a thin broth on my chowder, which is not, a lot of people like, that's not chowder. But you know, I cook the way I like it, but I'll teach you guys how to make it the way you are, because I think I'm singular in the thin broth section for chowders. I'm just not a fan of like floured thickened soups. They remind me too much of a gravy. Okay, we're gonna get some fresh parsley here. I'm getting to the bottom of this. This is pretty much all stalks. I want to use it up. I have like a whole nother bunch in my fridge, but I do want to use it up. Here, we're just gonna add about, a tablespoon of minced fresh parsley. I like to add it at the very end because if you cook the parsley too long, it loses all of its flavor, and it's really nice to have at the end where it's just a nice little bright little thing in there. There we go. And lovely. So we have our chowder here with our leftover Easter ham, carrots, potatoes, celery, onion, corn, and lots of herbs. Okay, let's get plated. So we have our thing. It looks like I hear one of my little ones waking up from nap, so I guess it's a good time we're ending. Okay, so we have our chowder here, which I'm going to scoop up. Perfect. Nice bowl. We have our potatoes in it, ham, and then we have our triple cheese sourdough melt on our homemade sourdough that had caramelized onions, garlic, and sage in it. So it's going to be this just delicious, ooey gooey things. I just love a good thing. You can see the cheese melting there. Look at that. All that ooey gooey cheese for the perfect grilled cheese. Okay, guys. Well, we are finished. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, show you what we're cooking for our family and what we're making. Um, don't forget to check on the link on our page. That's where we have all of our videos and we upload all of our live streams there. So if you want to remake a recipe, that is the best way to do it. We also do have some recipe cards posted there as well. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe.